So, Scoob is the latest Scooby-Doo movie. The computer-generated Scooby-Doo movie. Um, it's weird. Like we've had like a lot of Scooby-Doo movies. Like ever since this show first began in the '60s. Scooby-Doo has always just kind of been like a constant throughout the years. Like it's been one of Hanna-Barbera's most. Um, I guess you would say it's one of Hanna-Barbera's most successful series. I mean, it keeps going on with several direct-to-video movies and animated series that keep going on to this very day. You have the live action films that came out, so it was inevitable that eventually we were going to get a Scooby Doo CGI film in this day and age, and I think what needs to be said about this is that the reason that Scooby Doo has remained a constant despite the fact that the whole mystery machine team has have these kind of dated aspects to it is just that it's kind of just found ways to roll with the times. Like that's like the good thing about Scooby-Doo is that it has this ability to keep on going just by reinventing itself. But at the same time, that's kind of the problem with this film as well, is that in order for Scooby to keep going on, it essentially has to adapt to the animated movie template, which means like a lot of like the familiar cliches with the safe animated films are unfortunately taken in with this film, which is kind of sad because in all honesty, I actually do kind of like what they do with Scooby Doo in this type of film here. I mean, they set up the origin story of how Shaggy met Scooby, which is it's underwhelming, but I like the fact that it's included because it gives us it gives more of a grounding to like the relationship of Shaggy and Scooby, so that later on in the film, we can see like how this boy and his dog have connected for a long time, and that when they have to split up, it's actually deeply affecting. I kind of like that aspect. I kind of dig how they weave in different elements of other Hanna Barbera cartoons in here. They've said that this is apparently going to be the start of a Hanna Barbera cinematic universe. So depending on how this film does, it might pan out. We'll just have to see. But I kind of dig how they weave in the elements like Blue Falcon is no stranger to Scooby Doo. But then they weave in stuff like from like Teen Angels and Captain Caveman, and of course Wacky Racers with Dick Dastardly being included. So yeah, I kind of dig how they bring that in there. I also like how the Mystery Machine team, they have just enough to do here. It feels like they give every member something to do. Like I for sure thought they were going to give Daphne like nothing to do, but they do kind of stress how like each player plays a key part in the mystery, as opposed to just making the simplistic jokes and just tossing them off the side. Like they actually focus on what makes this team important and why they need to be together. Now all that stuff is great, but the thing is like it's great on paper, and the unfortunate thing is because this film has to be so manic. It has to be, have these like elaborate, slapstick animated sequences in addition to getting to that big musical dance number at the end. It unfortunately just bunches up on each other. So like there are a lot of great elements to this film, and yet they don't feel as wholly there. I mean, like I like the relationship between Shaggy and Scooby, and though we do spend quite a bit of time with it, I feel like we don't spend enough time with it where we don't feel as much for them when they have to split apart or make like at one point they have to make like an ultimate sacrifice. I like the aspect of how like Fred cares a lot for his van and mourns the fact that his van's getting old, he might not be able to replace it. Interesting angle, but not really focused on as much. There, like I said, there are lots of little stories here that I think really work, with trying to retool Hanna Barbera to work in this format. And like I said, doesn't really pay off as well as I'd hoped. Like I kind of really dig how they bring in Dick Dastardly into the film, as a villain who's seeking MacGuffin treasure, but at the same time also seeking his partner Muttley. And I like that there's a connection there between him and his dog, which you would think that him and Shaggy and Scooby could relate, but I guess that's for another movie, for the next cinematic universe of Hanna-Barbera. And it's like I really wish I could like this film more, because I like the ideas present, but a lot of like the writing for like a lot of the gags are fairly standard. They do a lot of like they do a lot of referential stuff, which is fine. Like Scooby-Doo has kind of had a little bit of that edge where Scooby and Shaggy have been a little bit knowing of the situation. They're a little bit knowledgeable, even though they're kind of dopey and scared of most of the time. I like that aspect. It's fairly expected for this type of template though, so it's not as unique as it could be. It's par for the course. And I guess that it kind of feels like that way for most of the film. It just kind of feels par for the course, both for Scooby Doo and for an animated feature, which is kind of sad. Like they bring Simon Cowell into the film, which I know for some people might be a turnoff, but Scooby Doo has brought in celebrities for the longest time, so like I said, par for the course with that. What I found interesting though about putting Simon Cowell in the film, Simon Cowell playing himself, is that he's kind of the secret villain of the film because he represents, what like why the team should split up. Because like he basically declares like Shaggy and Scooby the weakest links, saying, like they in terms of solving mysteries, they don't do much. And it kind of feels like that very cynical viewer who would watch Scooby Doo and say that it doesn't make sense why they would have these people on the team, and then of course the friendship will have to save the day in the end. Like I think Simon Cowell literally says like friendship won't solve mysteries or something like that, and they have to prove them wrong. It's like of course friendship's gonna save the day. Like what kind of animated film do you think this is? um, like the mystery itself it's okay, but it's like it's one of those like the monsters are real type plot. It's basically treasure hunting MacGuffins. You have some action going on with like the Blue Falcon ship. Again, another aspect that's interesting is like the Blue Falcon is now like the second generation of Blue Falcon. So the Blue Falcon's son is taking over, and he's not too good at the job, and he's fearing that he's not going to be the hero that his dad was. Again, another great aspect, but they're all just shoved together, and they really don't work that well. Especially when there's so much mania going on in this film that there's barely a moment to breathe. Like Captain Caveman just shows up, and it's kind of like I don't get to spend that much time with him. I don't know much about this character. The same with Dee Dee from the Teen Angels. She feels like she should have her moment here as like the pilot of the Blue Falcon ship. But again, like she just kind of serves her function because there's too much else going on in this film. It had the film just like the animation style I really do like. I especially love how in the beginning, they basically restage shot for shot the Scooby Doo the animated series opening, the original one from the '60s. And they do a pretty good job of it. It almost makes me wish that they did have that kind of classic, unmasking the villain. But they do kind of more like, I guess, kind of more like gags, like poking fun at it, and like some of the gags are fun. Like I do have to admit, I smiled quite a bit here and there. I giggled a little bit at some of like the quips that they made, which are fairly knowing. Um, but in terms of like the referential stuff, like after a while, it kind of like I don't know, like I mean, are any kids really gonna be that excited about one of the Teen Angels being referenced, or a Hong Kong Phooey reference in the background? I mean, this is all for like adults. I get it, throwing adults something. Um, but I mean, just for the sake of references, it's like for an animated film, it's par for the course. So I smiled here and there, but it's just like there's so many moments where I just thought if this film could just slow down just a little bit, like they could still have all the funny, crazy crap going on, just slow down a bit, and then we could appreciate these characters a little bit more and get to like appreciate a lot of their arcs. Um, in many ways, I was reminded of the DC Comics did a whole bunch of like Hanna-Barbera character reboots a few years ago, and they try to make them like a little bit darker, but also a little bit like true to the character and give them like very interesting arcs. And it feels like it kind of has that type of writing here, where it feels like the characters can go into a few more interesting places that they haven't gone before, but there's not a lot of time or room in this animated film to explore them, and so as a result, it's just another manic animated film, unfortunately. Cue the dance sequence at the end, which is kind of sad. It's kind of and considering this is supposed to be the start of the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, it's very much underwhelming here. I completely forgot about Dynamite too. That there's like I said, too much going on in this film to fully appreciate, which kind of stinks because I think that it's actually got some pretty good ideas here. So yeah, for Scoob, 2 out of 5 stars.